For the audience that may not be familiar, could you kind of explain what the altars are and what's the purpose and kind of how they come to be? I know it's a dark portion of this whole thing, but
It's a
I'm
really,
yeah.
really dark portion. And usually when I talk about it, people's eyes glaze over and they never hear a thing after that. So I will make it as least nasty as I can.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's an important part, I believe. People do need to be aware of this.
Yeah, actually, this is the part that I wanted people to understand is that children all over the world are being kidnapped and mind fractured. That's what the process is called. It's a child's response to extreme trauma. It, it's a survival reaction so that, because so many people, their parents would die in horrible ways right in front of them, the child would learn to break that memory off and put it in a bubble by itself. So this is a natural function that they're taking advantage of. So they kidnap us. I was 4 when they took me. We're talking all of the kids that are taken for this who survive are under the age of 7. So we're talking little kids. We're not talking teenagers. So the people who talk about their experience, they were teenagers, they haven't remembered the first one. Okay? So they take you away from your parents, and the first thing they use is mind wiping tech. So you don't remember your family. So their idea is if you don't remember you have a mama, you won't be sitting there crying for her. That's for their benefit. Okay, so you have this small child who has been mind wiped. Some of them, all of their language function goes with it. So they're left having to learn how to talk all over again. In my case, I forgot how to read. My mother had already taught me. So the first thing they started with was drowning us because they wanted us to learn to inhale water because they had a regeneration tank like the Germans use. Okay, each of the factions has its own set of technologies and they don't share between them. And they knew I was going to be turned over to the Germans, so they were using the German technology on me. And their medical support is a tank where they can bring you back from the dead for up to 4 months. So the people working on me didn't care if they killed me or not, because they would just dump me in the regen tank. That's important to understand because one of the lessons I had to learn while I was in this process was that death was not an option. I could not die and be relieved of what they wanted me to do. So those people who think, well, I had a choice, nope. Once those people had their hands on me, I had to do what they said. And that's important for the later memories. I didn't have an option. So the first thing they did was drown me until that stopped working. The next thing they went to was rape by adult men, and I was 4. And when that stopped working, they went to sodomy. And when that stopped working, they had a section of a wall that they had hollowed out to be just about child size. And they would stick me in there and nail boards over the outside and leave me there to suffocate. And people wonder why I do not like closed places now.
Yeah, that's absolutely awful. Okay, so are you supposed to know this? I mean, apparently you're not supposed to remember all this stuff, right?
I'm not. None of us were supposed to remember any of it. Now, part of my story is in 2013, an NSA unit out of Fort Meade, Maryland, were ordered to restore my memories. They literally used my remember code from my original mind fracture. Now, I have never found out why they wanted me to.
Just about to ask you that.
I have no clue why they wanted me to remember. So that is a weak point in my story. Now, I had anomalies before that. I could see into other dimensions. That's consistent with being a navigator. I was really good at math. That's consistent with being a navigator, because dimensional math to be able to travel. I was drawn to the German language like a magnet. And I went through 5 years of school to learn to speak German. And my final professor was from Berlin. And he told me, you speak German really good. You can go into Germany and people will understand what you're saying. But don't ever tell anybody I taught you. And I go, why? He says, I have no idea how you got a Schwabish accent from me.
Interesting.
Well, the Schwabish dialect is what we spoke on Mars.
I see.
The Schwabish dialect is what the Germans in Antarctica speak. That's part of why they call it Neuschwabenland. Well, so the first ship that came through and discovered the hidey hole was called the Schwabenland.
So is it pretty accurate that our secret space program was formed after Paperclip with these different factions that came over?
That's a extreme simplification. The German groups had actually been working on the technologies since the 1700s. They had been in alliance with the United States Office of Scientific Services since before the American Civil War. And somewhere during Teddy Roosevelt's administration, he switched our alliance from Prussia to Britain. I've not found the paperwork, but I found the change in policy. So I know it was during his administration. I just don't know what he did. But his change in policy is why we supported Britain during the 2 world wars instead of Germany, because we had been supporting Prussia up until Teddy Roosevelt. There was an alliance between Tsarist Russia, the Prussian Empire, and the American government under Lincoln, where had he not been assassinated, the plan was to have a railroad line that started in Berlin and went all the way through Asia in Russia, and then at the Bering Sea, come across the Aleutians, and then down into the United States and all the way south to the tip of South America, following basically the same route that Interstate 5 does now. This was the plan, and it was canceled because Lincoln got shot and his successors rejected it. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in history. This is documentable.
Are you still actively going on missions or still involved
Yes.
with this? Okay.
Yes, I'm still involved in it. That's why I can come up with fresh memories, is because I still have altars active. And because of the way I was activated, I get bleed over from other altars. I'm not in them all the time, so I don't know everything they're doing, but I'll have moments that might last half a day where I'm seeing through their eyes, unable to change their actions. There were times that I was able to change their actions, and I blew up a factory. So it's probably a good thing I can't.
Yeah. Now, when these altars, I guess, are activated, some of the other individuals I've spoken with that are involved with some of these black ops, it's all different for each person. Are yours just physically, it's you and your body acting as this altar, or is there some kind of consciousness transfer, as I've heard from some of these individuals? How do you actually work whenever you're in?
It depends on who I'm working for and with. Okay, the times I go with the Germans, it's this body, and they do an age regression because they like to keep me at age 25 the whole time I'm working with them. They say that's when women are prettiest. And yes, they are sexist as hell. They try to keep men at 30 because they're most productive then. That's their peak. So they have the technology to do it, so they do it because they can. And productivity is what matters to them. So I will say that I came to the Germans the first time I was 9 years old, and they invested 10 years of schooling me. So they put me into Shula with their own kids on Mars and taught me everything that they teach their own kids, plus how to fly a plane. So I was treated really well by them. They have a cultural thing. If they find something that bothers you, they'll pick at you about it. There's a lot of people on Earth that do that. And those of us who had been genetically modified before we were sent, and the Germans didn't ask for that. The Americans did that to us first. They would call us a misgevert. And they basically tagged that as my name because it bothered me so much. Misgevert means an abortion that lived. And I found that so personally offensive that I have been known to use my psi abilities on the idiots that call me that. You get tired of a nasty name over and over and over and over forever. And I have done 91 tours of duty with the Germans. So that's a long time to be called an abortion that lived.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now the Germans, you said, have operations on Mars. Is it just the Germans, or are there different factions also on Mars?
Well, the Germans are there. They were primary. Um, they wanted to get out of their part, at least part of their arrangement with the Draco, and they had to find someone to sublease. And so the CIA took that over for them. And there are Department of Defense people there, Americans. There are also Russians and Chinese, and basically anybody that goes into space, they're doing their primary basic training on Mars. And they're, whatever they act like here, they used to be really good friends in space. I have seen people of every nation working with the Germans.